Hey everyone, Larry Bailey here, Mortgage Workflow Partners, bringing you some more information to help you master your Encompass platform. Today we get our hands on the brand new Encompass version 24.3. It's only released into testing environments, and I thought it'd be really cool to actually record this kind of release notes walkthrough, not just with just the pages on the PDF, but also showing you what's going on in the testing environment. Some clients don't actually have testing environments, so I thought it would be great to show you what it looks like. That way, for those that don't have testing environments or don't have time to go into the testing environment and do the testing, it'll kind of take this video and it'll show you exactly what it looks like so you're best prepared. So we're going to go through each one step by step so you can see what's happening and what it looks like if it's appropriate. There's some things that are in the release notes that are really easy. There's screenshots, that kind of a thing. But for others, it is going to be very important to show you what it looks like in the Encompass environment. So let's go check it out. Naturally, we've got the release notes here, major edition. As far as the releases go, 24.3.0.0. It's not uncommon if we get a hot fix before the release on December 7th, but for now, it's still 24.3.0.0. And what's really important is as we go through these notes, again, there's a ton of table of contents. That's on page 3. As we scroll down, you can see that this is obviously a major release. So as you have any SDK software that's running, you're going to want to make sure that's updated because this is a major release. For your companies that have SDK software, make sure you either work with your vendors to coordinate the timing, or if you've got internal developers, make sure you plan accordingly, of course. And so let's go down. You can read through all the highlights, those kinds of things. There's a lot of great pages just to kind of give you hints. There's also usually an administrator's checklist. It's not out yet, but it's not. It wouldn't surprise me if it was out sometime soon to help you through the checklist on that. All right, so here we are at the very first huge change, and I've talked about this for a little bit when the pre-release notes came out for desktop, and it talked about opening Encompass Web from desktop. Immediately I said, this causes me a little bit of agita because there are, most companies are not ready for Encompass Web. You don't have to move to the web. Again, I want to take this moment to reemphasize that there is no journey to the web. It was a confusing way to say it. And I was one of the people that was saying it. So I want to take all that back. If I could go back and tell myself, hey, dude, it's not a journey to the web. Encompass Web has actually already been there. It's been there for about 7 years. It's just now going to be more integrated into your daily workflow. So one of the things that happens here is you can go into a loan file and you can actually open up Encompass Web directly from the loan file. And in addition to that, what ends up happening is it'll land you in exactly the form that you were in. So again, if you don't have this configured properly, it's going to look very confusing. I strongly suggest, as I tell people in the Mastering Encompass Web Essentials course that we teach, it's one of these things that you want to get used to, this idea of card-based views. This is input form-based views. Do not, please, 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 do not take your desktop input forms and just try to recreate them on the web. That is usually a huge mistake. Better yet, what's more important is to understand your company's workflow and how to let Encompass Web augment that workflow. Sometimes you have to reimagine things, and it's not uncommon for that to be very difficult if you're in the middle. So that's why we offer these services and we offer this guidance and coaching to help companies really move to taking advantage of what's available on Encompass Web or even just web settings. So let's go over and you can see what that looks like. We're going to go ahead and bring up Encompass. So if we're in my Encompass, and I'll just go ahead and create a new loan. As you go into a loan file, at the top, you've got this open web view. And if you go and create a new loan like I just did, and this is grayed out, it simply means that the loan is not yet saved. So I can see this happening, a lot of confusion with folks that go create a new loan and they want to click on this. If you don't have a loan number yet, click Save. And the reason why that is grayed out is because there is no loan yet in the Encompass platform to open in the web. Now, if you go ahead and click that open web, what's going to happen is in your default browser, it's going to launch this new tab. And it's an SSO pass-through, so there's no extra signing on. It opens the loan that you're in, and in this particular case, it brings me to the application view because that's where I've defaulted this Encompass Web to land. One of the things that you might not have noticed very quickly is that it exited the loan file out of desktop and then opened the loan file in web. This is really important because if I were to go into this particular loan file as an example, and I were to go into any input form, and I were to make a change, if I just go click Open Web View, you're going to get this prompt, and it's going to ask you if you want to save changes. If you say no, obviously nothing saves. If you say yes, it'll save the changes first, and then it will go ahead and close this loan in desktop. It'll spin Open Web, and it'll bring you accordingly. Now over in here, you can see that it opened up another tab. So we've got this loan tab open, and we've got this loan tab open. Can you save loan information in both sides? Let's go check that out. So if we've got this loan open and I want to change this citizenship to permanent resident alien, click save, and I want to go ahead in this loan and go ahead and open loan information, and I want to change this to a primary and click save. So now we have two different loans open at the same time in two different tabs. Again, making sure that you understand what your teams are doing is very important. So we have this loan is in this tab, and this loan is in this tab, while we have our release notes open in this tab. Can I see people leaving these tabs open, which means that the loans are actually open? If we go back over into desktop and we refresh this pipeline view, you'll see that I've got two loans open. So one of the things that, again, you're going to want to understand is workflow. If your teams are going to be leveraging this, then you need to make sure that you plan accordingly for the work that's about to be done, because if they leave these two tabs open, you're going to have trouble with your staff being able to access that loan file. If you've got some type of third-party plugin that rings a doorbell or puts a knock-knock, they're not in desktop, so that's not going through. If you're on web, you have this thing called Notify Me. But again, if the other team that's using Encompass is using desktop, there's no crossover. So that's something that you'll want to think through. It's one of those things that you'll want to understand for what's going on and plan accordingly on that. Okay, let's get back over into release notes. So now that we're looking at this section of the release notes, we can go over and look at opening the web view from the pipeline. So when we look at Encompass now, if we are wanting to make sure that we open a loan file from the pipeline tab, you can click pipeline and you can click open web view, and you have three options here. One of the options that you have with this is the ability to open up the loan file that's highlighted on the screen. So if I were to click this and then go pipeline, open web view, loan, it's going to open up that Nicole Green testing loan file in my Encompass. You can see that opens it up. So now I've got three loans open right there. 1, 2, 3. You see where I'm going here. So when you have that, you have that ability in there. What you also have is the ability to launch open opportunities and prospects. Again, for me, this is really cool because now I can actually get directly from my web UI. I can go directly into opportunities and prospects without having to worry about any additional authentication. If I were to just go to encompass.ice.com, I would have to either rely upon my company's SSO workflow path, or I'd have to enter in 2FA, whether it's Ping ID or Duo or whatever else you might be using. So if I go ahead and open up opportunities, that's going to then launch my opportunities tab over in Encompass Web to work through that. Just like if I were to come over into looking at prospects, it would launch in here. As a reminder, prospects in Encompass Web is just for your incomplete applications on Consumer Connect, or if you're using Velocify, it'll launch and display all your Velocify leads that you're working through that are not yet moved over into application. So those are the big updates. That's what it looks like. And I want to make sure I showed everybody how that worked, and obviously some of the situations that could be very positive where you can have more than one loan open at once at the same time with one Encompass instance. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to be wanting to do that. There has to be solid training, making sure that when you do perform that activity, you come in and you want to make sure that you go into each of these files and click this X. By clicking that X, it brings this tab back to the pipeline. in here and as so. So this is Opportunities tab. That's the Incomplete Applications tab. But you're now in your pipeline view of Encompass. All right. So that's a really big part of making sure you understand what's happening in 24.3. The next one that's super helpful if you're using Underwriting Center is opening up the Underwriting Center from the AUS tracking. So again, if we go back over into Encompass and we go over into this John Q. Smith file, I go over into AUS tracking tool, which you'll find down, of course, in your Tools tab, and you'll look at AUS tracking here. What'll happen is if you look at everything over, you'll see Open Underwriting Center right here. Go ahead and click that button. It'll ask you if you want to save changes. I'm going to say no. And what that's going to do now is spawn over in your browser the loan file that you know you're in, and it's going to open up your Underwriting Center in here. Why is this important? Well, first of all, this allows you to run dual AUS. So if you're interested in running dual AUS, you'll get that. If you have not enabled things, you'll get those pop-ups, so please test accordingly. But here's how you can not only look at that, but then obviously look at your rep and warrant tracker, which is the same thing that you can find in a desktop in Tools. You can look at your early checks and your LQA for your Fannie Freddie files to see how your loan file matches up to what's currently on the GSE. So this is all really put together very nicely and easily. So it's really just to get people used to making sure they understand exactly what's possible within not only desktop Encompass, but also web Encompass. So that gives you an opportunity to go through those updates. We then go down, we're in page 25. We then go down into making sure that if you do want to have your teams access those, make sure you select the correct radio button here. Make sure that over in the persona under the web version tab of each persona that you've defined what's permissible. For those that have multiple persona syndrome, this is another big call to action, making sure that you understand that if you have multiple personas assigned to someone, you're now going to have to start to continue to evaluate what someone is allowed to do based upon all the personas they are assigned. If you are not sure how to fix multiple persona syndrome, please reach out. We can help guide you and coach you through that fix and get you to a one persona per user account goal. And so many reasons why you want to do this. The biggest one is making sure that the services and the permissions are all assigned to the user account as expected. And over the years, through all the workflow reviews we do and all the health checks and all the settings reviews that we do, the number one problem of settings is multiple persona syndromes. It's an issue that is totally clear to everyone, and how to fix it is usually unclear, and it's a lot of work. Good news is we don't mind doing the work. So anything we can do to help you, please let us know. All right, let's go and continue. So there's a new, in the pipeline, there's a new option to view current loan level archive status. So within the pipeline now, when you look at, there's a brand new field in here called to indicate a loan as archive. So you can now individualize your pipeline view. If you're kind of stuck and you don't want to, you don't want to click the checkbox, that kind of a thing, you now have a drop down. This is a field that, again, you are going to have to make sure gets added into your reporting database. It's a brand new field, 5016, right here. So it was previously included in the reporting database. However, in 24.3, 5016 is not available in the database unless you had added it to your field of selected fields in a previous version. So it just goes in to explain what you want to do. If you have it in your database, you want to basically exclude it from the database, which means removing it. Only after removing that should you then add the new to a loan indicate. So basically what it's telling you is if you've had this in the reporting database, field 5016, you need to remove it out of there in order to be able to see this in the feature being added in your pipeline views. So it goes on. That's on page 26 of 72. Okay, so let's get into some updates with Encompass Forms and Tools. We've got new fields that are being added. If you're using Income Analyzer, so that's a new field, analyzer.x18, on the borrower summary origination. This is another call out, by the way. If you're using a custom borrower summary form, that's great, that means a lifetime of maintenance. So make sure that as you're maintaining this properly, that you go in and include for all of these new fields. That way your teams can actually take advantage of what's now available. And if you're in a file on that income analyzer message input form, you'll see that checkbox in there on that screen. That's on page 28. Here's some new fields added to store data for the income analyzers, and these are correspondent.x fields that you'll see on page 28. So if you're using that, you'll also see more fields added on page 29. We'll go into the next topic, which is new virtual fields added to pass last completed milestone information to the mortgage analyzers. So we've got new fields, 2 new virtual fields that are now available for you, log.ms.last completed name and log.ms.stage name. If you're still using, by the way, ms.status, yes, it works. No, you should not continue using it if you can help it. It's one of those things where I do see that in a lot of code reviews we do, and it's one of those things where, yeah, it works, but it's not something to use forever. So you do want to make sure that you're changing your syntax updates to using the log.ms syntax instead of just ms, okay? Some new fields, new expiration date fields for mortgage analyzers. So obviously you can see more and more of the analyzers are being baked into desktop as well as web as far as being able to use these products directly into Encompass. Hey, if you're using Rule Assistance for USDA, you've got a new section here, and basically you've got 2 new additional rows, of loan level editable fields for the household income table. So you've got 2 additional rows as you need them, and you can see the field IDs on here. That's page 31. You've also got a new exclude unmarried addendum in the bar information form. So if you look at the URLA part 1, so again, for those that are using summary forms, again, kudos to you, lifetime of maintenance. You've got 2 new fields, 5036 and 5037, that you now need to use if you want to exclude an unmarried addendum from your disclosure packages. And here on screen on page 32, you'll see what they look like. We've got an update to the Reg Z total loan amount field calculation for HELOC loans. So if you're doing HELOCs, you'll want to check this out, page 32. We've got an update to the prepayment penalty calculation logic for loans primarily for a business or commercial purpose. So for all of you non-QM loan users, this is something that you want to pay attention to. You've got the calculation for the HMDA prepayment penalty period. That's HMDA.x82. That's been updated, and when the business or commercial purpose field HMDA.x58 is set to 1, primarily for business or commercial purpose, then NA, also not applicable, is automatically populated to the HMDA prepayment penalty field. So great for adding this. For those that are doing this through business rules, you probably want to come back to this. If you've got any rules tied to HMDA.x58 or HMDA.x82, you'll want to visit this. It's on page 32. Okay, visit your rules, make sure you update accordingly. All right, we've got a new field to indicate. So for those that are doing manufactured housing, you now have a new field for property was previously converted to real property. So for those that are doing manufactured housing, you understand what this is. If you're not, I understand, but it's field 5039. And basically, if you're working with Fannie Mae or an aggregator that's going to sell it to Fannie Mae, this is going to impact you. So on the property information input form, you've got a new field here, a new checkbox field, again, 5039. Chances are, if you're doing manufactured housing, you're probably going to want to add that to your required fields to be managed properly for your workflow before you go to closing, that kind of thing. All right, we're on page 33 now, and we've got new gifts or grants collection fields. We've got 2 new collection fields have been added. They're now on the URLA part 4, and I'm not going to read that. That's on page 33. That's a long URLA RGG0023 and 0024 there. And you've got that. The amounts applied to the down payment and closing costs entered here are populated to the corresponding fields that have been added to the verification of gifts and grants input forms. So this gets you basically over. So rather than just filling out the VOGG, you can just come here to the URLA part 4 and fill out those fields. And again, it's literally the GG fields, gifts and grants fields. In addition, the source, the GG0119 has been added in there. So listen, if you're doing gifts and grants and things like that, you're going to want to look at this for a lot of reasons. First of all, because there's an update to your workflow in terms of where things get added. This is very similar to the changes that people have been implementing slowly as regards to earnest money deposits and making sure that go onto the correct spot into the 1003, which carries over to the URLA lender. And the idea here is that if you're using these fields, you'll see at the bottom. Now, it says on the screenshot here 2015 itemization, right? This is at the bottom, and this is also the same fields as a URLA lender. So don't let that confuse you. If you see 2015, it's at the very bottom. I would prefer you think about this on the URLA lender, especially if you're using itemized credits on your workflow. These fields may change from M3 to something else. So pay attention to this. Check it out. If you don't have a testing environment, unfortunately, check it out December 7th. If you do have a testing environment, definitely compare this to your workflow notes in your for what your teams are going to be doing for training in terms of managing those fields. All right, we've got next one here on page 35. We've got a new FRE condominium project identifier field, CASASRN.x221. And we've got to go through and make sure that we've updated this field specifically for Freddie Mac LPA. So that's FRE is a shortened moniker for Freddie inside of Encompass. Don't know why, it just is. Okay, we are into page 36 now, new fields and additional updates for Freddie Mac, additional form data. We've got a bunch of new fields here for loan program identifiers published by Freddie Mac in July of 24. So if you're selling to Freddie, you definitely want to get on this bandwagon. This is page 36. We've also got some new ULDD fields that you've got to manage. This incorporates changes made for phase 5. You've got new fields on the Fannie tab and Freddie tab. So if you're like everybody and you've got to make sure your ULDD is updated accurately, you're going to want to make sure that this information is carrying over properly from the rest of your loan file, wherever that is, whether it's manual or automated. Make sure you're doing that. And here, just get some screenshots. We've also got new home counseling fields added to the ULDD input form. This is on the Fannie and Freddie tabs. You'll see those highlighted here on the screenshot. This is on page 38. We've got new fields added for correspondent appraisal valuations. So if you're working with purchasing loans in the correspondent channel, you've got a bunch of new fields in here to manage in relationship to the appraisal valuation collection. Okay, and good news is Encompass Partner Connect does support this workflow, so you can check that out accordingly. We've got a new field indicator for PUDs. This is, again, correspondent stuff, but correspondent.x565. It's not provided, listen, the call out here is not provided on any standard Encompass input forms, but is in the reporting database and can be added to a custom input form, okay? Users can compare this field to the PUD checkbox URLA.x207 to see if they what they want to do with it. If you want to make sure it's included in your submissions or your final submissions, things like that. We're at the bottom of page 39. We've got new fields added to the rep and warrant tracker, and this is to support additional rep and warrants and income employment verifications. So that's good. That's coming from Fannie Mae in here and Freddie Mac. Again, FNMA is Fannie, FRE is Freddie. So you got your LPs there. In addition to these rep and warrants, we also added into the Encompass reporting database, but they're not provided on the rep and warrant tool. If you want to track these fields, you can track them if you like on any custom input form. Go from there. All right, we've got a new field to capture the maximum qualifying payment on the verification of additional loans for the DTI. So if you're doing like a purchase and they're doing a HELOC that with somebody else, so you're doing the first and they're doing a second with somebody else, maybe it's a seller held second, who the heck knows? You've got a maximum qualifying monthly payment for that DTI. For that subordinate lien. So really interesting stuff. If you're doing first where there's another second that's not in your Encompass, this is helpful for you to track. That's on the bottom of page 40. And there's a screenshot for how that looks. You'll see there where it says monthly qualifying payment down there, and that's on, again, the VOAL, verification of additional loans. So it gives you some explanations what to do there. It's on page 41 into page 42. We've got continued updates here on page 43. There's a new flood insurance agent field added to South Carolina's state-specific information input form. See, a lot of companies get stuck on these state-specific information input forms, mostly because there's 50 additional forms that are in one input form. It just kind of flips based upon the state. So make sure that you're doing a couple of things with these state specifics. Number one, try to stay on top with these release notes, obviously. But number two, also counterbalance that with your state disclosure matrix and potentially your closing doc matrix, making sure that you've got all of the state specific fields required so you get the correct state specific disclosure out. So it's not just the fields here on the input form. I also want to make sure you're leveraging on the resource center the state specific information input form so that you can get all of those correct disclosures out. Okay, so let's keep on going here. And we've got new assessed value field to capture government specific state fees or government fees for specific states. This is on page 44. We've also got a credit report first issued date. So this is a standard field, 5040. It's been added to the reporting database for you. And the purpose of this field is to capture the credit report that was first issued. This is important because a lot of times if you reissue a credit report, we get this new date. And sometimes people want to basically capture the first date. So then you set up an audit trail and you do some other fancy stuff by using a field trigger rule to a custom field and with a check value. And well, now you can just use field 5040. So there you go. You've got a new field to identify, validate product and pricer. So you get a 5029 to validate the pricing provider used for the loan. Don't know why that's important, but there you go. Somebody needed it. New fields added to lock request form. All right, so let me talk about this for a second. You've got float updated on field. So it's a new read-only field that's been added to lock request form tool to provide users with a way to float date to determine the float rate lock has been requested. This is a fairly common problem with some product and pricing experiences and workflows because you can't really tell in the file if it's been floated and getting the data to update or getting rules to work if the loan is floated. So this field 5035 is hopefully going to track that problem for you. So if you've been struggling with when the user floats the loan to make sure other things are happening versus when a lock is requested, that field 5035 is going to hopefully help you with that. In addition to that, you've got a new lot own free and clear checkbox that's on 5038. That's obviously when you've got lot and loan status you're addressing. All right, we've also got a free and clear checkbox added to loan snapshot and lock request snapshot accordingly. Again, this is really important if you're dealing with construction loans or things like that, construction to permanent loans, and you're trying to figure out, do they own the lot free and clear or not? So that's how that looks in there. We are down now into page 46. We've got updates to the GSE additional provider data. We've got a ton of new fields in there. Basically, a new account check section has been added to the top of the form with 2 brand new fields. If you've been using the following fields on this form, and this is again, where we are is the GSE additional provider data. And what that purpose of that input form is basically to take the numbers or the keys basically from the service provider and pass it to the AUS when you run so that it can, AUS, whether it's Fannie or Freddie, they can go fetch the information from that provider. So we've got 2 new fields for account check here at the top, fannieservice.x3 and fannieservice.x4 for the borrower and co-borrower respectively. But we also have a bunch of fields being removed. So if you have any of these fields in any of your business rules as requirements, you're going to want to address this. So especially if you're using account check. So make sure you review this list. This is on page 46. Review this list and manage your situation accordingly. Okay, let's see what's going on here. Oh, as a note, those things that are removed, again, these fields have been removed from the form. The fields were removed from the input form, but they're still available in the reporting database and may be added to custom input forms. So if you're still using them, obviously, if you've got data in there, you're not losing the data, just to be clear. It's just coming off that input form, okay? And it looks like there was a naming convention change from Avantis 4506T, comma, VOE, VOI to just 4506D. All right, moving on. We've got an update to the interest rate on the FHA informed choice disclosure, so to allow for 3 decimals. By the way, you're supposed to be updating these. How often you update them is up to you, but this was a change A few major releases ago where Ellie Mae at the time used to update this for you. And then when rates got really, really low, everybody got upset because it looked like your rates were higher on this disclosure. Now you have to self-manage. If you haven't been in here for a while, please go in here and update these rates. Keep in mind that these are just text fields, right? So you have to fill in the interest rate. You have to fill in the monthly P&I and all the other fields accordingly. ICE is just letting you know that these fields have now been updated to 3 digits. Okay, moving on. That was page 47. We're now on to page 48. It's going through that again. We've got a new option to manually select the AMI dataset year. So this is field 5027. This is one of the 3 settings that you can automate, right? So in your admin tools under automation section, which by the way, when you go into admin tools, it defaults to not automated. You've got to actually hit the drop down and go up 2 levels, 2 rows in the selector tool. And to the automation, you've got 3 automations in there: home counseling automation, AMI, and MFI. And if you're not using them, you're missing out, especially if you're using a third-party tool to update the home counselor. Like that's just, at this point, you're just wasting money and wasting resources because that plugin, even if it's free, it's not helping you when you have web-based workflow automations or if you're using TPO Connect, obviously you understand that that's part of the process is to automate home counselor. So in any event, that's a good call out there. That's on page 48. You see some representations there. And recently I helped a client deliver AMI boundaries. So basically, well, we're automating the AMI in specific counties that they lend. This happens to be a bank. And we're automating the AMI into specific counties to either show 100 or 120 down in this AMI field, and then writing workflow rules and milestone rules and FDE rules and persona access to fields rules, making sure that we've got everything in line between the secondary and the rest of the company, so that if a loan is a purchase first-time home buyer and there are LLPA waivers on it, that if that income exceeds the AMI during the workflow, loan stops until secondary updates the pricing accordingly, send out the COCs, that kind of a thing. Okay. That's on page 49. Again, we've got a new option to manually select the estimated MFI dataset year. Same principles as the AMI. We've got an update to the fields on the compliance review results, which is also known as ECS Data Viewer. We've got the following updates have been made, and you can read all about it here. This is on page 50. If you're not using the ECS Data Viewer tool, check it out. You'll actually find some really cool information in there as far as all the different kinds of results from Maven, Encompass Compliance Service. So that's in here. Those are the results. I've actually used these fields for disclosure, preparation, automation, that kind of a thing. ICE PPE provider update saved to lock snapshots. So we've got, if you're using what was known as EPPS, now known as ICE PPE, you'll see that there's updates to that. That's on page 51. So if you're using ICE PPE, also or previously known as EPPS, pay attention to page 51. Going into page 52, okay. Middle of page 52, you've got electronic document management. Document file size is no longer a display in File Manager. So starting with version 24.3, the size of the attachments and documents in the e-folder are no longer displayed. The size column has been removed from File Manager, Unassigned, File Manager, and File Section. This update was made to remove irrelevant information and refine the general look of blah, 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 blah. So the file size is honestly, yeah, it's kind of erroneous information. I do want to call this out, electronic document management. So in the settings, it's called e-document management down under additional settings. If you're looking for that, that's what that's talking about. Document conversion setting is now read only. By the way, this was called out in last release. So here it is. Starting with 24.3, the e-folder setup document conversion setting cannot be modified, and it's read only. And the reason for this is because you need to be converting documents. And I've always trained since 2011, since I've been implementing Encompass instances since 2011. This conversion was always meant to have that checkbox made. So here, I'll blow it up real quick here, just so you can see it on the screen. But it was always meant to be keep a copy of the original document. It was always meant to be set to color. I've been teaching this for 13 years now. So finally, I no longer have to teach that. Thank you, ICE. All right, let's get back to our job here. Keep on going. We are now on page 53. Encompass settings, we've got a new persona option for the MI Center. This is for web version. If you've been struggling with access to MI Center and you think it's that persona checkbox, it's not. It's actually just the way you have your MI Center configured in web settings. If you have any trouble with that, let me know. But basically, this is all for web version. So you can go in there and now define in the persona for web version tab what they're allowed to do. Desktop version, that's controlled through the actual MI settings within the service provider. So again, if you're stuck, let me know. This is, again, only for web version. We've got bottom of page 54, we've got a new URL field now provided for the FHFA County Limits website. Okay, so that's a new URL field to go to their website. Down in there, we've got an updated warning message when importing compliance default fees into itemization. So basically, if you go through and you click import fees, one of the drop downs is the default list. You would only do this in really unusual circumstances. Normally, everybody listening to me talk right now is never going to do this. So it's just letting you know there's a big warning message. Don't, unless it's a brand new instance and you want to clear stuff out, don't do it. We are on the top of page 56. Total price and normalized bid tapes template changed to required field. So for those using normalized bid workflows, that's now a required field if you didn't have it before. And some more information on that for now accepts loan and snapshot collection fields. Bottom of page 56, we've got more info link on product and pricing settings updated to Encompass Partner Connect and EPPS integrations, also known as ICE PPE. We got some additional updates. We're now on page 57. We've got updates to the Encompass Smart Client installation package. So if you're still using the old installation package, you're going to want to move away from that. Get with your IT teams and get them to use the new installation package. And there is a call out here down at the middle of page 57 for your developers if they're worried about your data warehouse toolkit. Talks about the rebranding. You'll now see ICE PPE in there instead of EPPS in the secondary setup. ICE PPE branding, ICE PPE branding. Awesome. And that is the end of the feature updates. We're going to have a separate video for the fixed issues. Tune in for that. That'll be next. We'll see you there. Take care.